Hey, Larken Rose here. Okay, for those who don't understand this, I'm just going to spell this right out, exactly what's going on right now. And if you are either flavor of statist, Democrat or Republican, liberal or conservative, you fall for half of the bullshit and have no idea why what's happening is happening. Here is how psychopaths create a conflict. I'm going to use this real world example because it's such a fine example of the evil and how effective it is against people who don't really know what's going on. So you start with immigration, not just freedom of movement, not just people voluntarily interacting and trading. That's been around forever. That goes fine in the vast majority of cases. So let's say U.S.-Mexican border. And if people are free to move and occasionally something bad happens, okay, that's viewed as an isolated incident and people say, okay, but mostly we like each other and like you go to Mexico and it's fine and people are friendly and all that. But to create a violent conflict, you can't have that if you're psychopaths in a ruling class and you need to generate violent conflict. Here's how you do it. First, you pay to bring in a bunch of foreigners, lots and lots and lots. Now, it isn't just you let them in. It isn't just you have an open border, which is the only moral thing to exist. It's that you make taxpayers resentful by intentionally stealing money from them and using it to pay for importing a bunch of people and giving them free room and board and giving them handouts with the goal of making the taxpayers here resentful about it instead of just having no line and people can go where they want. So you've created resentment on one side. Now, it's important that you disarm the population as much as possible to make them easy targets of both private violence and crime and also government thuggery. Because it's only when they're helpless and vulnerable that you can scare people into wanting government power to protect them. So after you've imported a bunch of people, you want to, if you're the evil psychopath, you want to focus on and give a ton of attention to crime committed by those foreigners, by those immigrants. Look at this, look at this, look at this. And because there's millions of people, you could do this with any group. You could say, we're going to make redheads look really bad by finding a bunch of crimes committed by redheads and splashing those all over the news. So you focus on that because you want the people who are already here to view the entire category of immigrants as dangerous and violent and nasty. Now, if you intentionally allow, to one degree or another, crime by immigrants to go unpunished, you build up more resentment on the side of people who've been here. So a lot of people point out the double standard. It's like, hey, here's this, here's the normal punishment for this. How come these people are getting away with it? You in power want that to happen because you're trying to create resentment and hatred on both sides until you can ramp it up to the level of causing actual violent conflict. So then you get the people here who are blaming the entire category of foreigners and immigrants. They're the bad people. We're the good people. It's our country. They're the bad people coming in. Never mind that the vast majority of foreigners and immigrants aren't committing crime. They're just working and trading and being people. But that creates racism when you focus on that enough that you have the people who are already here resenting the people who weren't. Racism, nationalism, whatever, it isn't always race-based. But it's always pack mentality. This is our country. And you can get people who are of the same race saying, well, I came here legally and I resent this huge category that didn't file the right paperwork because I now view that entire category as nasty and scary and criminal because of what the government instigated on purpose. Now, in the other direction, you paint those resentful people, whenever possible, as racist. As you're just xenophobes, you just hate anybody who doesn't look like you. Now, some of them will be because you made them that. You created racism to one degree or another by demonizing this whole category. A bunch of them still aren't. A bunch of them are still just going to be mad at the actual violent criminals and say, well, the immigrants who come over and are nice, like I know a bunch of them, they're fine, I'm not mad at them. But you want the other side to think of everybody here as evil, racist, white supremacists, even when they totally aren't. Until you can get people on both sides thinking in terms of this huge pack and this huge pack. If you're in this huge pack, you don't like that huge pack. You don't trust them. They're racist. They're all sorts of nasty things. They're white supremacists and stuff. And they're bigots. The whole giant category, not just the ones who actually are, but the whole category. And you want everybody in this category thinking that immigrants and foreigners are all violent criminals and they hate America and blah, 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 and so on and so forth, so that everybody is thinking in terms of two giant packs and hating each other. Now, when enough of the pack that's already here is angry, then you start to crack down with violent enforcement on the other pack, on immigrants and foreigners. And you intentionally get overly vicious about it to make this side angry. You intentionally abuse them, openly, violently, with just authoritarian thuggery. Meanwhile, this side's going to make excuses for it because you've trained them to hate this pack. So when you're abusing this pack, they're at best making excuses for it and probably cheering for it. But then this pack is going to get resentful and angry about being abused, as of course they would. And thinking in packs, you'll keep getting one side cheering for it and the other side feeling victimized. Now you keep pushing this fascist thuggery against this group until you create resistance. You're abusing enough decent people until the decent people want to resist you and get angry and protest. And then you paint that protest and resistance and righteous complaint, you paint that as criminal terrorism and insurrection. How dare you object when the violent ruling class is abusing you? And when the backlash to that gets big enough, the protest is big enough, and a whole bunch of people come out to object to it, that's when it's important for you as the sociopath in power to instigate violence, to make it into a violent conflict. Because if it's just viewed as a bunch of people righteously objecting to being abused by an authoritarian government, lots of people will be on their side. So when there's a protest going on, you have to instigate violence. You can do things like shipping entire pallets of bricks and cinder blocks and have them sitting there. You can also literally hire people to put on masks and vandalize stuff and instigate violence, whether against the government enforcers or just having a riot in general in the area and breaking windows and hurting people. And what began as a bunch of people being upset by the injustice you created will, to some degree, turn into just a mindless, violent conflict. Because when there's a riot, the worst people in the world are going to come out of the woodwork to break stuff and steal stuff and just be violent assholes. Because that's what they are. And that's what you want to focus on. That's what you will draw everybody's attention to. Violent rioters. So you want to take this huge number of people who were merely upset at an actual injustice that you caused as the psychopaths in charge and make the entire thing look like just violent, evil rioters and insurrectionists and an invasion of these scary foreigners. Instead of just like most of them are just upset at an injustice, you want to paint the entire side as scary, violent criminals, because then you get all the people on this side to go rah, rah, rah for authoritarianism, because they're still thinking in packs. So this side is now cheering for just Orwellian police state dystopia, literally, because they're so angry and scared of that group because you pointed out the minority of that group that's actually doing violent, nasty things. Some of which are actually instigators that work for you. Others are just jerks and opportunistic assholes. But you will paint that as the behavior of that side to make this side hate them. And you will openly be thuggish and violent and authoritarian in the crackdown so that this side can hate that entire side, including everybody who supports it, including everybody cheering for like bringing in the Marines and this and that and the other thing. And during all this, you're going to have two political parties and each one pretending to give a crap about one side. You'll have the Republicans saying, oh yeah, we got to crack down on this crime and bring law and order and stop these horrible violent rioters. You got to sound pro-justice and anti this violent crime. You're not. You're just an opportunistic puppet of the machine, but you're going to pretend that so that this gang cheers for you to have power, those puppets to have power. On the other side, you'll get the Democrat Party pretending to give a crap about justice and freedom and constitutional rights and things like that, when they don't at all. They just want power too, but they know that if they sound sympathetic to the cause of people being abused, those people are going to say, yeah, we want these people in power. So if you keep focusing on the unjust violence in both directions, whether it's the authoritarian thuggery of the state or the actually violent rioters, both sides are mainly focused on the violence being committed by the other side. And they think their side is, well, our side's good. Yeah, sometimes bad things might happen, but mainly we're the good guys. You guys are all the violent ones. And both sides are thinking that the entire time. And because both sides view the other side as violent, you can keep ratcheting up the violence on both sides with your instigators and with your enforcers. And both sides will be too stupid and clueless and duped to even notice what's being done. And both sides will be cheering for more violence to be used against the other side. This is the same thing that's done in every war that ever exists. And then you get this huge side and this huge side really, really angry at each other and hating and resenting each other to the point that your human livestock is at each other's throats. And both of them are begging for more government power as the solution. Because that's what the conservatives are doing. They're begging for authoritarianism, bringing in the Marines, just police state, we're gonna crack down. And the left is like, no, we need government to do this and have handouts and take care of us and blah, blah, blah. And we're gonna protest till we get that. So you have the livestock divided into hating each other, being violent at each other, and all of them seeing government power. They'll vote for two separate sets of puppets, but they're all focused on a political solution and whining to get different puppets into power or go rah, rah, rah for the puppets who are already in power. And you get violence, and you get bloodshed, and you get nastiness. And the average people out there who don't like that stuff and who actually want peaceful coexistence and freedom and justice and all that, it will never occur to them that you did that on purpose. The Trumpites will be way too stupid to understand that they were tricked into cheering for authoritarianism, which will be used against them. They actually think, no, our side really is the good side. And those bad, scary people, they're the bad side. Well, the people over here think, this is why we need Democrats to protect us from this country full of scary racists. And weirdly, the fear of each other's group kind of comes true. Because both sides fall into the pack mentality so much that, yeah, they kind of become violent, immoral, authoritarian idiots on both sides. So if you, as the psychopath, if your goal was power, you get it by taking mostly basically decent people in both of these things that turned into sides and making them into resentful, angry, hateful, bitter, violent animals. And this side of violent animals and that side of violent animals both feel completely self-righteous, even if they're doing nasty things. And both of them clamor for a government solution, and neither of them notice that they've been played and they're just pawns, and they're being abused by the people they voted for, by the people they're cheering for. And it's only the people who, through all this emotionalism and violence, can keep focused and sane and principled and moral and recognize, yeah, the violent people, the rioters smashing private property and hurting people, they're bad. They should be stopped. Also, the violent thugs of the state who are abusing people and being the aggressor, they should be stopped. But most people won't have the awareness to recognize that, and won't have the awareness to say, I am on the side of anybody. Don't care what they look like, don't care where they came from, don't care what they sound like. Anybody capable of peaceful coexistence, that's the side I'm on. And I recognize full well that government will always be there to try to pit us against each other. The people who understand that are the only ones who don't fall for this crap. And that includes 0 Republicans, and it includes 0 Democrats. And this violence will continue, and it will get worse. This is just one example of what's going on in LA right now. Ruling classes will keep doing this as long as it works. They will keep pitting the human livestock against each other and generating conflict and hatred and violence until you acquire enough principle and awareness and understanding and philosophical principle to say, I don't care about sides. I don't care about nationalities. I don't care about races. I don't care about any of those opportunities for division. I care only about aggressors and victims. And I am always against the aggressor, anybody who initiates violence against somebody else, and always on the side of the victim. By the way, there's a term for that, the non-aggression principle. And it's the foundation of what was supposed to be libertarian. Now, the Libertarian Party is not by any stretch of the imagination that or anywhere near that. But that's also the foundation of voluntarism, of not having ruling classes so that people can coexist without evil psychopaths making us hate and kill each other.